An exhibit in East Tennessee this month offering viewers a strong connection to the past.
WBIR 10 News reporter Leslie Ackerson live in downtown Knoxville with how you can check this out. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Abby and Russell. I'm inside the gallery, UT's downtown gallery off of Gay Street with manager Mike Berry talking about this incredibly powerful exhibit. Mike, when people walk through the doors, they're going to see several restored, some not restored violins, correct?
Yes. It's a self-guided tour. There's 38 violins, different stages of the instrument. Some of them don't have strings. They're in rough condition. Others have been fully restored, but still tell an important story about where they have been.
Now let's talk a little bit about the history. One of the things that really struck me when I walked in is learning that there were orchestras in the concentration camps. That's what some of these instruments come from.
Yes, and some of them tell the story that the Germans in the camp, they used these musicians for all different types of reasons, but they would play in the mornings when the prisoners went out to their work detail, and then when they came back at the end of the day. But they also played officers' birthday parties, get-togethers, things like that. So they use the musicians and their music in the camps, which is surprising.
Definitely. And this and other bits of history, stories, each of these violins a different story you can learn as you go through the exhibit. You all have extended your hours and this exhibit. When can people come down?
We're open Monday through Friday, 11 to 6, and Saturdays 10 to 3, and Sundays 1 to 4. The exhibit is free and open to the public.
And what day will the exhibit close?
The last day is Sunday the 27th of this month.
So about 2 more weeks to come down here and get to see the Violins of Hope, Strings of the Holocaust. What else is really interesting is these violins are going to be played by the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra in a concert next week on the 23rd and 24th. You can buy tickets to see that performance as well. For now, I'm going to send things back to you in the studio, Abby and Russell.
Leslie, thank you.
The time is 6:10 now.